Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
As a child, Camille was considered strange in the yard because she was not afraid of the dentist. When other children were being dragged into the dentist's office by their parents, hysterical and red-faced from crying, Camille was eager to peer through the narrow slit in the door and get a glimpse of what was going on. She was not afraid during dental treatment. Maybe because she didn't eat a lot of sweets, or maybe because everything that was going on aroused the girl's keen interest. She followed every movement of the doctors and afterwards asked 1,000,000 questions, flapping her naive, childish eyes. The sound of the machine, the miracles of solidifying fillings, white coats. It was all a special world for 8-year-old Camille. It was no surprise to anyone that upon graduation from high school, the girl firmly decided to become a dentist. All high school, she prepared diligently, learned chemical formulas, and diligently solved biology tests. Sometimes Camille put on a white coat at home, a cap, and imagined how to conduct the reception of patients. She had once borrowed it from a neighbor who worked as a pediatrician at the local clinic. "And why do you want to pick the teeth of other people's uncles and aunts, Camille?" Her mother sighed, stirring the soup in the pot. "Well, you want to teach capricious children." "Flipping through a book," answered the daughter. "It seems that you went to your grandmother." The woman grinned. "Only she was a veterinarian, and you decided to get to people." Camille grinned understandingly. Kathy's grandmother had worked as a zoo technician in the village for a long time, until she retired. And even afterward, at the director's request, she often came to check on the condition of the animals and deliver cows in difficult labor. At the same time, Grandma was not shy to cover young graduates of the Veterinary Institute who had just arrived at the farm and did not even know that it was dangerous to approach the cows and horses from behind. When the farm was disbanded, strong on her word, the elderly woman continued to be called by the locals. So, as long as there were at least a couple of cows in the village, there was plenty of work. Kathy lived where she had worked half her life, in a backwoods village. Camille's mom, Miranda, took a different path. She didn't want to live in the village and went to the city, hoping to fit into the new environment and achieve a title higher than honorary milkmaid. However, the city did not treat Miranda as favorably as she would have liked. The woman did not advance beyond elementary school teacher, but she received a small one-room apartment for her length of service, the kind of apartment where the kitchen is already cramped for 2 people. Camille was born and raised there. No matter how cozy it was under the wing of her mother, but since 15 years the girl thought about living separately. But where to? The modest salary of a teacher did not allow such a luxury. Her father stayed with them for a short time. Like many truckers, he lived for 2 families, of which neither of them knew. In the end, the man simply did not return from another trip. The mother waited 6 months and then, gathering her courage, filed for a unilateral divorce. Camille was secretly sad. She loved her father, and she missed his care, advice, and experience. However, her mother did not start any new relationships after such an outburst. She lived with her work and her daughter. The final exams came, followed by vacations. And now Camille stood in front of the doors of the medical school, struggling with shyness to enter. She had passed by countless times, dreaming of how she would get her student card and credit. But now the familiar outer walls seemed harsh, pressuring, even though the fulfillment of her dream depended on them. It felt strange. "You're not a sophomore." Someone touched her elbow. Camille turned around and saw a blonde girl with a pointy nose and oddly age-inappropriate brightly colored hairpins. I think she was a sophomore. Camille opened her student ID. Yeah, sophomore year. Cool. The stranger glowed and clapped Camille on the shoulder a little too suddenly. At last you found someone. My name is Clara, by the way. Camille, let's go find our group and office. Gradually, Camille and Clara became friends to such an extent that even their teachers began to call them an inseparable couple. The calm, reserved Camille and the volcanic Clara. Studying was not easy. Camille was warned about it by both teachers at school and her mother. Medicine does not tolerate amateurs and students. From the very first year of study, they persecuted mercilessly. Sometimes Camille fell asleep over her notes. Head puffy from the incredible amount of information learned, early rising, and the long road to the institute too exhausted. But the main thing was that her childhood dream, albeit slowly, but approached her. Clara did not strain herself so much. She often read magazines in her classes. She could oversleep and in general perceived going to the institute only as an excuse to dress up. They'll expel you after the first session. Sometimes Camille would say to her careless friend, "Oh, I just need this crust for a beautician." Clara waved it off. "But to get it you have to pass your exams with at least a C." Camille stopped her. "I have enough knowledge for a C," confidently declared the village fashionista. In fact, Clara was not so lazy. She just had a different world view. Instead of studying every day, she preferred to stay up the night before the seminar to answer before forgetting what she had read. She took notes from her neighbors and used textbooks and manuals to prop up the wobbly table in her room. She was not a lazy Clara, and because she immediately began to look for some part-time jobs, or rather, they found it themselves, to hand out flyers at the dormitory or something to take somewhere for a small fee. So, by the end of the semester, she was invited to work evening shifts as a barista in a small coffee shop. She brewed coffee a little better than the cleaning lady, but she made eyes at all the visitors and smiled with 32 teeth. She left good tips, on which the girl bought cosmetics and new handbags. Rustic directness and simplicity pierced where the city was difficult. Clara was not afraid to look stupid, and it always played to her advantage. She had a goal, too, and the girl was going about it simply in her own way. Camille was always fun with Clara. She knew the latest gossip, had a lot of funny stories to tell. She could do her makeup in the bathroom before class. On one of the frosty days before the session, Camille stood at the bus stop in the morning, waiting for the bus, and a few other people crowded together with her. Time was running out, and the right bus was still missing. The grannies behind Camille were getting louder and louder. A man in an old-fashioned fur hat and a briefcase like an office worker finally couldn't stand it and asked the driver of the next bus where the number 14 had disappeared to. "They've all been written off." He shrugged indifferently. "Now you can only go to the center with transfers." Rumors that the bus would be liquidated had been circulating for a long time. But as it happens, everything happened at the most inopportune moment. The man in the fur hat cursed loudly, not embarrassing the passengers, and began to hurriedly call a cab. Camille realized that she would have to do the same in order not to be late. As luck would have it, the first class was a seminar with a very picky professor who wouldn't let latecomers in. To get to the institute, Camille gave away all her money, even scraped change from the farthest pockets. She ran into the auditorium a moment before the bell rang and, breathing loudly, flopped down on the bench next to Clara. "Where have you been?" "I was already thinking about how to get you out of school." She pounced on her friend with questions. "My bus doesn't run anymore," Camille complained, laying out her notebook. "I have no idea how to get there now. It's either a round trip across the city or a cab. So you move into my dorm. Clara's the one who yelled at me. 5 minutes and you're in school. Just remember to brush your teeth. Camille wanted to object, but suddenly realized that the idea is not so bad. And if it was a choice between her getting up an hour earlier and an expensive cab, Clara and the hostel won either way. After all, she'd wanted to live on her own for a long time. Room fees were ridiculous for students. She spent more on commuting from home, and she could go to her mom's on weekends. My roommate had just moved out, so that, as they say, all the cards were stacked against each other. Clara theatrically raised her hands to the ceiling. You'll write an application to the commandant, and they'll move you in quickly. Camille nodded. The time we spent on the road could be used for more useful purposes, studying, walking. We could get a good night's sleep. The commandant was a little nagged when she gave her papers. What are you doing? She's a local. I have to settle in non-residence. The girl kept silent, knowing that she was obliged to settle in. The commandant once again looked at her with the look of a dog, wanting to bark at a passerby in case of something, but there was no such thing. In the end, she accepted the application and told her the date of settlement. We almost walked out of the dormitory. She squeezed Camille in her arms so tightly that she even squeaked. Yay, yay, now we're together. The mother took the news of her daughter's future move with enthusiasm. The apartment was cozy, but cramped, and this fact, alas, did not change even motherly love. Did not eat there only all kinds of nasty things. Miranda admonished her daughter, putting towels and a new set of bed linen in her bag, and don't drink at my place. She expressively, but rather jokingly, threatened with her fist. Or this Clara, your friend, Wendy, will start to influence you badly. The woman continued, Mom, she's fine. Camille defended her friend. She's just peculiar. A few days later, on her day off, she arrived at the dormitory with her things. Clara was already waiting for her, helped her bring everything in, helped her get settled, showed her where everything was. The room was small, but here Camille had her own separate bed, her own table, a closet, a shelf, and a whole wall. All in all, it wasn't too bad. The main thing was that it was a couple minutes from the university, and the rest would get used to it. In the evening of the same day, Camille and Clara were walking down the corridor, and suddenly they were called. Hello, girls. A student peeked out of a nearby room. Hi, Michael. Clara turned around and tilted her head to the side, like a mappy looking at a shiny bauble. What do you want? Come join us. We lack female company. The guy waved his hand invitingly. We'll feed you, we'll make you drunk. We won't leave you offended. We're celebrating a birthday, after all. Camille tugged Clara's elbow questioningly. It's Michael from 3rd year, who's been after me since the beginning of the semester, she whispered back. He's not bad, but he's a bit stupid. And you want to go? Camille took another look at the boy who was persistently beckoning them to come along. Why not? Clara looked puzzled and looked at her. Tomorrow is Sunday anyway. There's no need to go anywhere. We'll sit and chat. We're all friends. There's nothing to be afraid of. She turned to Michael. Okay, we'll be there soon. Wait. The guy glowered, gave them a thumbs up, and disappeared into the room. Camille hesitated for a moment, but then she thought about it. She hadn't really made friends with anyone except Clara in 6 months of school. Of course, she talked to her classmates, but it wasn't the same, and her old school friends visited less and less often and wrote shorter and shorter letters. They all had their own worries. and they didn't understand why she had to go to an institute on the other side of town. Clara quickly combed her hair, changed from pants to jeans, and found a decent t-shirt in the closet. Camille didn't bother with that. She just pinned her hair up. There were 3 guys and a girl in the room, apparently the couple of the birthday boy, tall, thin, but very hospitable. The old acquaintance greeted the girls and introduced the company. "This is Liam, the birthday boy, and his lady Cindy. This is John, the future of urban medicine. And this," Michael jabbed his finger at the guy sitting on a chair by the window, "Robert from the journalism department." The girls were welcomed and seated at a common table. After a while, the shyness of acquaintance evaporated without a trace. Everyone was drinking, eating, and joking. Cindy suggested playing crocodile. The boys readily moved the beds to make room. Camille stared blankly at all the new acquaintances. Michael was chatting with Clara, and it was obvious that he liked her. He was trying to lift her up, picking invisible crumbs off her shoulder, scratching the back of her head. Liam and Cindy had been together for a long time. It was evident in their communication and warmth toward each other. Camille even had a note of distant jealousy running through her mind. She'd dated a guy in high school, but he'd never treated her with the care and warmth these two had for each other. John made occasional jokes about doctors during breaks when his mouth wasn't full of food. He'd already put a couple ketchup stains on his shirt, but would that stop a man with a big appetite? Robert was the only one Michael introduced differently than the others. He didn't fit at the table. He sat by the window with a plate in his hands, but that didn't stop the young man from collecting all the stares. He told stories, joked, asked provocative questions, and posed picturesquely. "Robert's a blabbermouth," said Liam. "He chose his profession just to scratch his tongue. It's better to scratch your tongue than to pick at people." The student journalist theatrically grimaced, which immediately caused laughter of the company. "And what's wrong with helping people?" Camille suddenly asked. Everyone fell silent and stared at her with interest. Robert himself looked at the guest. "Well, you are not going to help them for free, are you? Or are you going to open a branch of the Mother Teresa Society?" He sarcastically teased Camille. "I want to help. First of all, I go into the profession at the call of my heart, not because it is profitable," parried the girl. "And you need to eat, so stop covering your ambition with charity." Robert waved his hand at her. "Sooner or later people will become just a means of earning money for you. But some people will earn money by talking, and others will see rotten teeth and other unpleasant things in the human body. Robert, enough of this argument you've been having with us for 3 years. All professions are needed, and all have their talents." Liam said conciliatingly, "Let's have a drink and play cards." Camille looked at Robert with an annoyed look, but did not argue further, so as not to offend the birthday boy. The trouble was, she liked the smug talker. Robert had a typical smarmy appearance, chiseled facial features, dark hair, strong charisma, and a sharp mind. Gradually, the angular conversation lubricated and the tension it had created went away. The party had passed 0 o'clock when there was a knock on the door. "Quiet," Liam hissed. "The commandant has arrived." Before Camille knew it, the table was covered with a sheet. Cindy and Jonah were hidden under one bed, Clara and Michael under another, and she and Robert were shoved into the closet. Everything happened so fast that hardly a fly could have flown in that time. The commandant's voice was heard, reprimanding Liam in a half-toned voice for the noise and mess after lights out, and the latter was making every effort to demonstrate the supposedly empty room. And so it was every time. Robert sighed, Camille over his ear. "He's hiding us in closets, the idiot." The closet was cramped. Camille felt her back against the guy's chest and almost stepped on his feet. For some reason, her cheeks were flaming and her tongue was lolling. Robert gingerly touched her shoulder, as much as it was possible to do while standing in a closet full of clothes. "I'm sorry, okay? It's just nature's way of picking things apart." That was rude. Without turning around, Camille replied. She could feel the guy's guilt. Was he guilty? Breathing on the back of her neck, it was getting stuffy. "Let's go out tomorrow as an apology. Pick your own place." Robert put his hand on her forearm. The commandant let go of the last nagging remark, wagged her finger at Liam, and made to leave. Goosebumps ran up and down her body. It was hot and cold at the same time. There was tension in the air again, but lingering, enveloping. "Come on," Camille agreed. "To the exhibition of modern artists in the gallery." "All right. I'll be waiting outside the dormitory at 5. The closet doors swung open. "Why haven't you two had a fight?" Liam laughed. "Almost." Robert was the first to jump out and winked at Camille. "You all right?" "Why did they put you and that ashhole in there?" Clara clucked, giving the guy a stare. "I think we're going on a date with that ashhole." Camille whispered quietly, trying to hide her red cheeks and the stupid love sparkle in her eyes. "Camille, you have golden hands." The grateful patient smiled goodbye and left the office. Camille took off her gloves and nodded to herself in the mirror. It was for moments like this that she had gone to the dentist's office. For grateful looks and sincere appreciation. And she didn't regret the years she'd spent studying. First 5 years in medical school, then residency for another 3 years. Paperwork for the registrar's office, a robe to take home to wash, so what else? Call Clara. They were supposed to meet today for a professional holiday. Camille threw on her coat, said goodbye to the girls at the reception desk, and hurried to the store for a cake. Clara still had a sweet tooth from the university. No one was home yet. Robert warned that he would be at the agency until the evening. While he was still studying, he started working part-time there. 7 years later, he took the editor's chair himself. But Robert had connections with every authority in the city, from vegetable stalls to the prosecutor's office. They got married while still at the institute, a year after they started their relationship and that meeting in the dormitory. Clara had convinced her that Robert was good, of course, but that he liked to show off. Her mother didn't take the profession of journalism seriously. What kind of work is it? Collecting gossip? Like plowing or sewing grain in a factory. That's a job. That's a job. When Camille came to visit on weekends and raved about her boyfriend, Robert was not what he seemed at first glance and not what everyone else saw him as. He knew how to be caring and delicate, and even restrained his desire to pick everything to the bone. At the same time remained the soul of the company, noisy lighter. Many girls openly envied Camille, frankly looked at Robert when they appeared at the institute. "There's nothing to see here," Clara waved her hands at them. "They're not here for the ballet." Although she was initially against the relationship between Camille and Robert, she soon became an ardent defender of their peace of mind and was even a bridesmaid at the wedding. Not without pride, informing the guests that without her the young people would not have met. It might have seemed that Clara had nothing better to do. But how wrong were those who thought so? Village fashionista had affairs with 2, 3 at a time, never bored in the evenings, sometimes choosing from several candidates, and was not shy to use her natural beauty. Those problems that she herself did not want to solve were solved by suitors. That's how she finished her studies, not really knowing what she was studying for. She got her medical degree as a working makeup artist. She didn't go to any residency program, and sat in a beauty studio, having mastered in addition to makeup and hair and other beauty procedures. From boredom or windiness, married and 6 months later divorced. A year more fluttered on dates and married again. Clara wasn't lazy. She was just lucky. And she was never shy about doing things that others disapproved of. That's why she won where others stopped. Camille sometimes thought that her road was straight and quiet, where you could see all the stops and bumps for miles ahead. Clara's road wiggled like a snake and went into potholes or under clouds. The important thing was that eventually, they both ended up with a destination. The tea was getting cold. Camille was already thinking of calling her friend, who was almost an hour late, when she heard a commotion in the entryway and a call. Can you imagine the client was late? She delayed me, and then the cab was still running. Clara started to get indignant. Camille just smiled. They hugged. It couldn't have been otherwise. Over the years, Slava had changed from a country girl with ambition into a cold city beauty. She cut her hair in a bob, always wore makeup and fashionably dressed. And she was more concerned with a new skirt and going for a massage than having groceries at home. Oh, you're cooking, I see. Clara had barely made it into the kitchen and immediately stuck her nose into the pots on the stove and into the refrigerator. And borscht, and stuffed cabbage, and compote. Camille did not chase brands and hairstyles. She dressed minimalistically and simply. But she knew how to create coziness and keep up with everything. William nags me for not cooking. Clara complained. Everyone has their own talents. Camille calmed her down by pouring tea. The friendly chat went on late into the night. It was always like this when they met. The cake was almost over and Camille was making coffee for the third time. When Robert finally came home, the young editor was disheveled and twitchy. He came into the kitchen, said hello briefly, hugged his wife, and retired to his room, saying he had had a hard day. "Why is he so sour?" asked Clara, glancing at the man. "Tired, I guess." Camille shrugged her shoulders. "You can't force him to sit down at the table." Come on, come on." Clara jumped up from her chair and reached for her friend's shoulder. "What is this?" She picked up a red hair with 2 long fingernails and showed it to the surprised Camille. "Ah," she mewed in surprise. "Maybe it was accidentally blown in?" "Yeah, say it was blown in by the wind." Clara stared at her with her hands at her sides. "I'm a friend of the men, know them like a peel. Came tired in other people's hair, just worked hard, poor guy." "What are you implying that he—" Camille moved into the room. "I'm not implying anything yet, but I have the fact on my fingers." Clara shrugged her shoulders. "We need to watch him. Think of something strange going on." Camille thought for a moment. Her friend's suspicion had shifted the bricks of her inner fortress just a little, but it was enough to make the structure shake just a little. Robert replaced Camille, and the father she had been deprived of became both friend and husband at once. The first years they lived, soul to soul, understood each other without words, and as if the whole universe was formed in the merger of 2 dissimilar characters. Then they experienced several crises. Quarrels were like everyone else's, but they quickly became the past. The last year they lived a very measured relationship, but loaded professionally. Both worked hard to achieve their goals. Maybe they've been socializing less. "Is everything okay in bed?" She was interrogated by Clara. "Well, maybe because of the work we've been doing, we've been socializing a little less." "Yes," Camille agreed. "Why do you even bother?" "One hair and you're already panicking." "Hair is where it all starts." Clara put her finger up authoritatively. "I advise you to go through his pockets, sniff his shirts, and his laptop too." "I'm not sniffing shirts." What kind of nonsense is that? Camille was indignant, although subconsciously doubts had already taken hold of her. Also, go to his workplace. Maybe they've got a red-haired trainee there. Clara said in a conspiratorial whisper. They chatted for a while, and Clara went home. Oh, I almost forgot. My salon will celebrate the anniversary of the opening. Come with Robert. You're my regular. At the cafe next week, Friday. Well, come, of course. Camille nodded. Smell the shirts, though. Clara winked, sent a kiss, and disappeared into the elevator. Unwillingly, Camille began to look at her husband. Before Clara's words, she had never thought of accusing him of infidelity. Of course, that fact was vaguely believable, but still. One evening, Camille went through her husband's things. God, what am I doing? She asked herself when she actually sniffed the collar of Robert's favorite shirt. It didn't smell suspicious, and there was no hair either. Camille calmed down and put Clara's words out of her mind. Clara is Clara, and her Robert is not like that. She had long ago accepted his job and the need to socialize with a bunch of people in a day. Not many people her husband could have had a meeting with. That's ridiculous. Robert, we're all right, aren't we? Camille asked on the way to the cafe. She didn't know why she had asked. The inner turmoil hadn't completely gone away. Robert turned to her. Yes, why are you asking all of a sudden? Why am I asking? Camille wondered. You can't tell me you found a hair. Lately you've been at work. We don't talk much. She stretched. But you know that I have a lot of things to do and responsibilities every day. Soon I'll take an assistant and relax a little. Robert smiled at her. Oh, here we are. Slaga was already waiting for them at the entrance, apparently tipsy and in full battle paint. She was friends with the owner of the salon and had even bought a small share of the business from her, so she could invite anyone to the party. Camille sometimes wondered where the careless Clara got the money for such a thing, but the mystery remained a mystery. The mini-corporate party was a lot of fun. The women's company was diluted by a few men. The owner's husband, a guy, a masseur, and the husbands of Camille and Clara. Camille, a friend's new husband, was hardly known to her. She had only seen him at the wedding and had little recollection of where he had come from. William looked frankly bored. Constantly attached to glasses with champagne, sighed and very sluggishly participated in the general celebration. The hostess raffled off certificates for free treatments among the guests. Camille successfully won one of them and hurried to please her husband, who went outside for a smoke. She jumped out of the door and looked around puzzled. Only Clara was outside, talking on the phone. Have you seen Robert? Her friend asked her. Clara put the phone away in her purse. Camille, while you were participating in the raffle, your husband poured wine on his pants and went to change. And we got a delivery of new manicure tables. They're idiots. They got their days mixed up. I'm rushing to the salon to pick them up, so I don't ruin the party. I'll be right back. Have fun. She jumped into a cab and drove away. Baffled, Camille called Robert. He confirmed that he had doused his pants, would change and be back soon. Miss me? She heard a voice from behind her. William came out of the door, Camille replied. No. They had said hello very crudely in the first few minutes. The girl wondered why her husband had not warned her and had left so hastily. Let's have a talk or something. William kept up. I don't know anyone here but you, and there's nothing to talk about with these women. They're all talking about manicures and new hair colors. He yawned tiredly and flicked his lighter. Well, let's do it. Camille agreed, realizing she was in a similar situation. William asked about work and his habits, his studies. only when he started to talk about himself. He complained about Clara, either explicitly or implicitly. Camille knew he was drunk, but for some reason she listened. She'd never talked to someone like that about her friend. It was as if she'd been given a glimpse into a secret suitcase. She cooks once a week, and then some crap that's impossible to eat. I'm used to home cooking. My mom was a cook all her life. William sighed. Here you work from morning till night. You want soup, cutlets, pies, and she buys salads or dumplings. Eat up, sweetheart. Ah, but she puts on makeup for 3 hours. Why did you get married then? Camille asked me carefully. Changing to you. She's so beautiful, you can't take your eyes off her. When I first saw her, I was blinded, but now I realize that you can't eat beauty alone. William finished smoking, moved closer and whispered, and I gave her money for a share in the salon, damn it. I thought at least she'd stop hanging around there herself and go home and earn an income. But she didn't. Camille suddenly felt sorry for William. She realized that his rose-colored glasses had shattered inside. On the one hand, he'd seen who he'd married. On the other hand, beauty always messes with a man's head. I would like a wife like you, Camille, calm, responsible, domestic, who is ready to bring up children, not to paint chickens in front of the mirror. Suddenly William said, looking into her eyes. Camille staggered back and pulled her fingers out of William's palm, which he had already managed to grasp. I don't think that's a good idea. The girl cut him off. It's high time we went back inside. She turned and walked quickly into the cafe. Her heart was pounding frantically. There was bewilderment and shame in her head, ticking behind her ears. Camille sat down in her seat at the table and poured half a glass of wine. Should she tell Clara what had happened? William's complaints and his fatuous innuendos. She'd start questioning him. They'd have a fight. They'll have to discuss it all again. No, let them deal with their own problems and with each other. Camille drank her drink in one gulp and reached for a sandwich. For some reason, she felt sick to her stomach. She wanted to hug Robert, but he had disappeared. She called. Her husband answered that he was almost there, but he was stuck in traffic. Finally, he entered the cafe wearing jeans and a t-shirt. About 10 minutes later, Clara burst in, out of breath, desperately arguing on the phone with someone. What idiots! This is not a company, it's a silent horror. Clara rumbled, sitting down on a chair next to them. Not only did they show up on the wrong day, but they almost hurt me. She pointed to a barely visible bruise on her elbow and an abrasion on her forearm. I'm sorry it took so long, Camille. Robert hugged her from behind. It's crazy driving in this traffic. Why didn't you warn me? Asked Camille. I was standing in the middle of the hall, pardon me, with wet pants. I don't have time to talk. I hurried to the car and rushed to change my pants. Robert guiltily spread his hands apart. Next to him, Clara continued to make noise and resent him. Camille calmed down a little when she felt her husband's hand. At the other end of the table sat silent William and glared at her through the wall of a clear glass. A few days passed. Camille was finishing up her work at the clinic and her mood was good. The last 8-year-old patient had simply delighted her with his courage and resilience. He even hugged the doctor's aunt goodbye and under his mom's proud gaze, embarrassedly said, "Thank you." Of course, Camille could not just let the little hero out of the office and handed him a new toothbrush, which was left by the brand representative for promotional purposes. The young doctor had already said goodbye to all her colleagues and was standing at the door when the phone in her pocket rang. "Camille, help me out." Clara's voice sounded in the receiver. "Come, model? My student and I need to practice, and the model is sick." "Now?" Camille was surprised. "Yes, it's urgent," Clara begged. "Okay, I'll be right there." She hung up. Camille often helped her friend out. It was not difficult and pleasant, because afterwards she always came home with beautiful makeup and styling, and Clara's training was not disrupted. It took Camille about half an hour to get to the salon, and they were waiting for her. Seated in a chair and under the popular tracks of the radio air, Clara and her student began to work. The girlfriend was scattered in another gratitude and scolded the irresponsible student, a model who did not come. When the work was done and the student went home, Slaga offered Camille to stay and have a cup of coffee, and it turned out very well. Looking at the makeup, Clara said approvingly, "She's a smart girl, maybe something good will come out of her." Camille theatrically flapped her eyelashes, turned one side and then the other. At the same time, she caught a glimpse of the old manicure tables. Camille would not have confused them. She had been to Clara's office so many times that she had already memorized how the tables stood and on which one, how the light from the window fell. "Didn't you say your desks were going to be replaced?" She looked questioningly at her makeup artist friend. "Where are they?" "And they turned out to be defective. We sent them back." Waved her hand. "What, all at once?" Camille was puzzled. "Yes, they all have scratched countertops. I told you the movers were idiots, banging them against each other like crazy." Clara brushed the shadow off her friend's cheek with a brush. "They ruined our holiday and our nerves. Did they hit you with the tables too?" Camille nodded at the greenish bruise on the makeup artist's elbow. "Aha!" Clara didn't even look at her arm. "They opened the door as if it were their own house, and I was knocked for company." My friends had finished their coffee and had long ago switched to another topic when Clara, who was scrolling through the news feed on her phone, suddenly rushed in. "Camille, look." She shoved the phone with the photo open on the screen. The girl looked at the picture and was surprised. The photo was of the entire staff of the agency where Robert worked. The guys were holding some certificates in their hands. Apparently, another award from the big shots. But another thing was interesting. Next to Robert stood a young red-headed girl. "Aha!" shouted Clara triumphantly. "I told you so. I told you so. I told you so." Camille said, looking at the photograph. She felt sick to her stomach. The nasty feeling from the conversation with William and the running around at home, from the discovery of the red hair, came back again. "It's all right, Camille. We'll expose him." Clara clenched her manicured fingers into a fist. "If anything, you'll be the first to file for divorce." "What divorce, Clara?" Camille jumped up, her cheeks flaming. "It's not clear yet. It's clear as day, dear friend." She folded her arms authoritatively across her chest. "Your Robert's gone rogue. We gotta go in there and rip that redhead's hair out." "Okay." Camille put her hands on her temples. "I don't believe this nonsense." "Okay," agreed Clara. "Watch him very carefully this week. Men are always wrong about little things." "I will." Camille nodded. She wanted to hint at William's behavior, but didn't. Offense could make a mess of things. Besides, Clara was just drawing her own conclusions, a little obsessive, but for now there was no one to take offense at, and nothing to take offense for. Robert was behaving normally. Camille, attuned to Clara's confidence, began to covertly follow her husband, something she usually never did. Until that day, Camille had thought that there was no point in restricting her partner's freedom, forbidding something, scandals or jealousy scenes. She had realized this when she was still a student, although she loved Robert very much. She admired him as a man, as a human being. The more controlling, the more likely the opposite effect. And to arrange emotional swings with a choleric sanguine like her husband is a noisy and dangerous task. Scenes and emotions to him enough at work, at home wanted peace. He said so himself. During the day, the young editor, like a chameleon, adjusted to anyone who got to his office, and in the evening at home, wanted to be himself. Feeling like a failing schoolgirl, Camille rummaged through her husband's backpack, his notebook while he was in the shower. On the pages of the notebook, she found a list of phone numbers and women's names. In his jacket pocket, a strange pink-colored pen. Her heart pounded loudly, thudding in her ears as if it had been covered with a bucket. "Camille, what are you doing?" Robert stood in the doorway, looking at his wife in amazement. The girl froze with the evidence in her hands. "Are you accusing me of something?" The man folded his arms across his chest. "What is it?" Camille jabbed her finger at the list of numbers. "These are the candidates for the assistant position." The husband shrugged indifferently. "I interviewed them last week and put them all here." "Why? Did you use this?" Camille waved a pink, girlish pen in the air. "First my own, then I ran out of paste, and Kelly lent me her writing utensils. What's the problem? Why are you going through my stuff?" Robert glanced around at the slight mess on the desk. Nostrils dilating, Camille felt like a fool. She replied something, and under her nose, she slipped the notebook and pen to her husband and went into the kitchen. His explanations were very convincing, but the worm of paranoia continued to gnaw its way through her thoughts. Camille crushed her whiskey with her hands and sat down at the table in the kitchen. She grabbed her phone and texted Clara about what had happened. The makeup artist didn't believe her friend's husband's excuses and offered to follow up with him to be sure. Camille looked at her schedule, figured something out, and texted back, "Go ahead." Camille went to bed late. Robert was already on his 10th dream when she finally settled down. Before that, she stared at her sleeping husband's face for a long time, trying to find answers to the questions that tormented her. In the morning, she pulled herself together, pretended that nothing had happened, walked Robert to work, and waited for Clara. Her friend arrived just as Robert drove out of the yard. "You ready?" Clara's voice was filled with an ill-concealed excitement, as if she'd been waiting a long time for permission. "Do I have a choice?" Camille looked at her, buckling her seatbelt in the car. "Well, you might not like what you see, if you see anything," corrected Clara, shrugging her shoulders. "But it would be better not to see anything, of course. He's gotten kind of aloof." Camille murmured as they caught up with Robert on the road and pulled a few cars farther away. He seemed fine, but something was wrong. That's how it starts. Clara nodded, gazing down the road. First they get cold, and then they start lying. Our feminine instincts can't be fooled. Did your previous husband cheat on you? Camille suddenly blurted out for some reason. Clara jerked faintly at the wheel, so surprised by the question. Sebastian? Maybe he cheated, very probably. She threw it back vaguely, but I didn't care anymore. I went on a date. I realized I was sick of Sebastian. I felt sorry for him. I didn't tell him, and when I got sick of him, I filed for divorce. Aren't you afraid William might cheat on you? Camille could barely contain her impulse to spill the truth. William? Please. Clara waved her hand and instantly relaxed. He's head over heels in love with me, like a doggy waiting for me at all times. Is so in love, she muttered under her breath, so that Clara wouldn't hear. They pulled into the parking lot near Robert's work. His car was already there. It was going to be a long ambush, Slava promptly ran to the nearest stall for coffee and buns. It took until lunchtime to doze off in the car. Slava nudged Camille in the shoulder as Robert came out of the agency together with the red-haired girl from the photo. They got into the car and got ready to drive out. "Let's go, lovebirds. We'll get them now," Clara muttered excitedly, twisting the steering wheel. Camille watched her husband's car with bated breath. She recognized the girl from the photo. Robert had said it was his assistant, but was it just that? The answer to that question loomed somewhere on the horizon. The editor and her companion made a trip to the city utility office and the stationery store. On the whole, there were no provocative moments except for the opening of the door. The girl carried a folder with documents, sometimes asking Robert something or answering the phone. He himself almost never took his eyes off the phone, even while driving. "Yeah, does he hold the door for you?" Clara was smarting when she noticed a gesture of kindness from her friend's husband. "Almost always," Camille answered, following Robert with her eyes. "Listen, call him right now," suggested Clara. "Ask him what he's doing and see what he says." Camille dialed the number and waited. Robert's phone was busy, but he switched calls almost immediately and picked up. "Hi, did you pick up lunch?" She answered his reply. "No, I'll grab a bite in the cafeteria. Don't worry." In a completely calm voice, the husband replied. "All right," Camille sighed. "How was your day?" "I've been traveling for work." That was the answer. "Why are you calling?" "No reason." Camille sensed that her husband suspected something. "See you tonight, bye." Clara listened to the conversation with her arms folded across her chest. He didn't say he was traveling with a woman. She played with her eyebrows expressively. Hiding for sure. Her wooden confidence pierced the last shield of doubt in Camille's chest. Why the hell did he even need an assistant? Clara clasped her hands together. Somehow he'd been working on his own for 2 years and nothing. And now what? Suddenly the manager's ambition has taken over. "I don't know." Camille was staring out the window. "Tired, I guess." "Yeah, from work or your wife?" Clara snorted. "Let's go home. Do you drink white or red?" In the evening, Robert found 2 drunken girlfriends at home. Camille couldn't get Clara out for about an hour. She'd ask for a drink, she'd cuddle, she'd lose something in her bag. Finally, William arrived and took his exuberant wife himself. He cast a glance of interest and questioning glance at Camille, and they left. Now her husband seemed to Camille the best and most innocent. She fell dreamily asleep, hugging her pillow and whispering something to it with only her lips. Robert sat in the chair and waited for his spouse to fall asleep. He did not scold her, did not lecture her. He only set the alarm clock, put a couple of fizzy pills on the table, and put a glass of water on the table. Then he went out, hesitating on the threshold of the room as if in doubt. But the second confusion lasted only a moment. The man glanced at Camille, nodded to himself, and closed the bedroom door. Camille became nervous and jumpy. She began to be late for work, snapped at a patient who had traveled to her from across town for the first time. "Camille, why don't you take a vacation?" The receptionist at the desk asked sympathetically. "Maybe I will," replied the doctor, wrinkling her forehead tensely. She began to notice a cooling in her and Robert's relationship. Then he hugged her dryly, then forgot some usual little things, then dropped calls and called back himself. Camille remembered the way the other female students looked at him during their studies. Robert had always stood out. He was passionate, charismatic, had a great sense of humor and a sharp mind. Next to him, she, but felt sometimes that she did not reach. Over the years, Robert has not lost any of its appeal, even became even brighter. You have a salary today. Go to the mall. Buy yourself something. A dress, shoes. The mood will improve. Camille, my colleague, advised me sympathetically. It was a good idea. She had almost forgotten that it was the height of summer and that she didn't have to be self-conscious about jeans and simple t-shirts. Camille called Clara and suggested that they go shopping together after work, but her friend said she was busy and refused. At the mall, the windows were full of sales posters. Mannequins towered between the rows of clothes. Camille remembered what pants and styles of dresses she had been advised by Clara the day before and began to walk along the racks. After choosing a few options, she went to the fitting room. What a pleasant surprise! She heard behind her back when she came out to evaluate the outfit in the big mirror in front of the booths. Camille turned around and saw William. The man had come to the mall, apparently for the same reason she had, to update his closet. What a surprise! Camille muttered. Hello, William. The dress fits perfectly. The boy gave her a thumbs up. Don't hesitate to take it. This time he was fresh and had a positive attitude. The old memories that had come alive with his appearance slid unpleasantly down her back. Camille, I wanted to apologize. William began, shyly putting his hands behind his head. I got drunk in that cafe out of nerves and fatigue. I was talking nonsense. I'm sorry. I acted like a total asshole. Camille was surprised, pleasantly surprised. Good, it happens. What are you doing here? She glanced around the store as if confirming the question. I closed a nerve-wracking deal at work, took a breather, and out of the bonus, decided to buy myself a long-time dream. William nodded at the package from the appliance store, and the new jeans were a bonus. Camille looked at the jeans appraisingly. You take them too. Don't think twice. She smiled slightly. Even this sudden company in William's face was good for her for some reason. Maybe it distracted her from her obsessive thoughts. Maybe she needed a counselor, or maybe it was something else. Clara was busy working, and she wouldn't come with me. He said, as they left the store with their purchases. Me too, busy for the day. Camille confirmed. How about a coffee? William suggested. Or was there something else you wanted to buy? Camille thought that the lingerie shopping would have to be postponed and nodded in agreement, approving the coffee idea. At the cafeteria cash register, she wanted to pay for it herself, but William was the first to do so and put a flavored drink and a small dessert in front of her. Camille hadn't ordered the latter. Come on, as the husband of your best friend. William waved his hand. We're almost related. Before he could say anything, he heard a text message from the bank. Why? William stared sorely at Camille, looking at the balance of the card. Almost, but not related. The girl commented briefly. They chatted, then went back down to the shopping floors and wandered for a long time, picking out one pretty thing or another. Camille sensed that William was enjoying himself with her. He didn't turn on that whiner in the cafe anymore, but was cheerful and somehow relaxed, at the same time talking about all sorts of funny situations at work, reminiscing about old friends and years of study. There was even room for a story about William's country childhood and the fun vacations of a first grader. Listening to all this, Camille did the main thing, distracted herself from obsessive thoughts about her husband's love. It was time to get home. The time was nearing evening. Camille hailed a cab as they stood at the entrance to the mall. Thanks for the shopping trip. Camille smiled as the car pulled up. Thank you for the pleasant walk. Maybe we can do it again sometime. William opened the door of the cab for her. It's probably not the right thing to do. Camille hesitated. William gave her a quick peck on the cheek and said, "Well, you're a big girl. It's time to prioritize what's right." Camille drove home dazed and outraged and flattered. She was a mixture of all the emotions of the last few days: resentment toward her husband, worry about their private life, irritation, and into all of it sprinkled sparks of innuendo from William. It's not right. It's not nice that she's having coffee with her husband, her best friend's best friend, who is the second time he's made ambiguous hints to her. Why? Well, of course she knows why. She knows she loves Robert. She knows she values Clara as a friend and loved one. And she knows she's not ready to go along with what William is veiledly offering her. Everything is obvious and simple. But then why is she flattered by his attention? Is it not compensation for a grudge from Robert? How long had it been since he'd spent with her? Almost half of his day off. The more Camille thought about it, the more the questions became, leading her into the wilderness or to an unpleasant crossroads. Tomorrow I'd talk to Robert straight, Camille decided, and tell Clara the truth about her husband. That would be the right prioritization. The next day, Camille had few patients, so she got off early after work. On the way, she received a call from a nervous Robert, who asked her to bring her work phone, which she had forgotten at home. On the way, she thought about the best words to say to her friend and her husband. She decided to start with the first one. She dialed Clara's number and proposed to meet in the evening. The makeup artist happily said in the phone about her agreement, and even asked if it was worth dressing up. "No, we'll just sit around," followed by a reply. Entering the apartment, Camille heard the trills of Robert's work phone. She picked it up from the mirror in the hallway and glanced at the screen. There were about 10 missed calls, and she was about to get into a cab when a message sent at about 1 o'clock in the morning caught her eye. "Missed you, my affectionate boss. Looking forward to tomorrow." Camille felt like she'd been splashed with cold water. Here it is. Her suspicions, here in her hands on her husband's phone screen. Tears came to her eyes. Her nose pinched and her throat was filled with rage and jealousy. Camille caught her own gaze in the rearview mirror and was stunned. She was looking at an angry and deceived woman, hungry for revenge and justice. All plans to talk to her husband were forgotten in a moment. "Warden, then," Camille hissed, clutching the phone so that it almost cracked. The cab driver involuntarily glanced at the passenger. He sensed with his spinal cord that something wrong was going on behind him. The only thing the girl managed to do before jealousy finally drowned her in its cauldron was to write down the number from which the text message had been sent. Camille burst into the agency office with flaming cheeks. The staff said hello to her, but the girl didn't hear. She yanked Robert's office door open, to the astonished stares, but it wouldn't budge. "Robert's at lunch." A fellow journalism intern shyly spoke up, emerging from the right. He was the first to catch Camille's furious gaze. "We'll wait for him here." Camille glanced angrily at the empty chair of the assistant next to the office and sat down in her chair, tapping her fingers on the tabletop expectantly. The whole office stared at her, with a mixture of fear and bewilderment. Someone had apparently called Robert on the sly, and he came rushing in a couple minutes later. "Did you have a good meal, sweetheart?" Camille got up from her chair and angrily shoved his nose, the phone screen texting. At the same time, she glared angrily at Kelly, who was standing in the doorway behind the chief with a stack of papers. "Camille?" The girl felt that her claims were being ignored, that everyone was laughing at her in a voice that was not embarrassed. "Why? Why did it say the word supervisor?" She threw it at Robert's back, grabbing the doorknob. "I have no idea. As if there weren't enough bosses in town." Without turning around, Robert replied. Camille stepped out of her husband's office, and a dozen prying eyes stared at her. She walked briskly down the hallway without looking at anyone, and on her way out of the building she saw Kelly standing by the parking lot. She was being hugged and apparently comforted by some guy. Camille froze for a moment, and then shame came over her in a wave that burned her from the inside out. Tears held back, hers for so long, tore down the barrier and dripped from her eyes. Nothing. Clara counted the drops of valerian. Men, they are so dodgy. Cunning, but you don't need to cry over it. Appreciate your dignity. She handed Camille, who was shaking, a glass of water and a sedative. Clara came as soon as she heard her friend's unintelligible voice mixed with crying. Clara, I've embarrassed him. The girl took the glass with a shaking hand. And him and me. I'm anticipating a story on their website. The editor's crazy wife bursts into the office. God, what a shame. Camille was in tears again. She hadn't been able to calm down for about an hour. Well, Clara sighed. At least you'll be remembered. And why would you go there in the first place? I'm such an idiot. Camille bumped into her friend's shoulder. We're all a bit stupid. Clara gently put her palm on her head. Why did you call me this afternoon? Camille realized that she couldn't handle another confrontation today. I just wanted to chat, she answered. Maybe do some shopping. Well, we're not going anywhere now. No amount of foundation can hide your puffy eyes. That's what I'm telling you as an expert. Clara made a finger to the ceiling, which made her friend smile a little. What are you going to do about Robert? I don't believe in random texting. I don't know. Maybe I'm just really paranoid. Camille slumped against the back of the couch and stared at the ceiling. If that's the case, you should apologize. I'd do some more digging. Clara wouldn't let it go. It was reckless of him to sleep with his almost secretary. It's like a joke situation. There's someone else, that's for sure. I'll talk to him if I can. Camille exhaled. For some reason, she dialed the number she had copied from her husband's cell phone. Once again, it responded with the monotonous muttering of an electronic robot. Robert came home late that evening, but Camille waited for him. Her husband looked at her glumly and without a word went to take a shower. Robert, I'm sorry. Camille waited for him in the room. The man walked past her and shook his head. I'll forgive you, but my reputation is ruined by your tantrum today. There will be whispers behind my back, and I gave Kelly the day off. I was wrong. Camille stared sorrowfully at the floor. I'm so embarrassed. I was so ashamed. Robert sat down on the other side of the sofa. You've turned into some kind of paranoid neurotic, haven't you? Going through my things, sniffing my hair, then doing this because of some stupid mistake. Some strange woman. God damn it. I just felt like our relationship was getting colder. Quietly, Camille muttered. When it seems, my dear, it is customary to be baptized, said Robert. Have you decided to play the jealous wife? The idea failed, but Clara said, the beginning was Camille. You and Clara should be in the Yellow War together with ideas like that. Her husband came at her again. Who does she listen to? She can't see what's under her nose, but they give you advice. She has a husband who walks left and right. Suddenly, Robert stopped halfway through the sentence. It looked as if he had said something unnecessary, and now he was trying to figure out how to put it back. Camille's ears perked up. Shorter. The man pressed the bridge of his nose with his fingers and covered his eyes. Take a sedative, and don't talk nonsense to Clara. She's a bad influence on you. Robert stood up and left the room, signaling that the conversation was over. Camille was left sitting alone in the dark, confused and full of doubts. Robert knows something about William, but he doesn't say anything. Is it male solidarity or what? And why is he suddenly so against Clara? Tormented Camille did not pay attention to the real coldness of her husband and his frank unwillingness to solve the problem and forgive her. A week passed. Life went on as usual. The head doctor of the clinic informed Camille that she, along with 2 other young dentists, would go to a 3-day conference in another city. The girl was even a little happy about this turn of events. It could help her take her mind off her worries, although outwardly no one would have found in Camille's life reasons to do so. Her husband was friendly to her. Clara still called and chattered like a magpie about everything. The patients didn't diminish, but behind the outer mask of normality, there was the affable coldness of her husband, a girlfriend drowned in rhinestones, and a job that suddenly became exhausting and drained all her energy. Camille could never find the strength to talk to her friend about her husband. She had no proof on her hands except her own words. No enough suspicions, she would have to get her family in order first. Robert agreed that the trip would be good for his wife and even bought her a train ticket. You'll listen to smart uncles and aunts, you'll go for a walk and put all the nonsense out of your head. He admonished Camille as she packed her traveling bag. The train was tapping its wheels. The girl rarely rode trains, and every time she did it was a bit of a gimmick. Colleagues were arguing animatedly nearby. Robert may be right. I'm being paranoid. He and I have been together since we were 18, and there has never been any occasion. Thought Camille, looking out the window at the passing station, Christmas trees. How many people preyed on him at university? I didn't really care at the time. Well, almost. Yes, it's all about panicking yourself and others. Whether it was the monotonous chug-chug that chased away the bad thoughts or the atmosphere of the trip, Camille was in a pleasant mood. She put her head down on the iron and freshly laundered linen. I'll come back and we'll definitely go to my grandmother's house in the country. Camille decided and closed her eyes. Training in the company of the sea and the sun really did the girl good. In the morning, she and her colleagues listened to seminars of experienced doctors and presentations of new materials for work, and in the afternoon, they went to the beach to sunbathe and swim. The sea climate and fresh air seemed to erase her worries from her mind. Camille thought about how she would return home, how she would tell Robert about the trip. How then the 2 of them would go to the place where malachite was mined and a friend was writing his collection of stories. It's a pity I don't have Clark with me. The girl thought, watching the waves. She said she hadn't been to the sea for a couple of years. Camille wanted very much to share her peace with people close to her. After all, the colleagues were only colleagues. On the 3rd day, the organizers said that the last speaker could not come due to illness. They apologized to the participants and informed them that the training was closed. Camille decided not to stay one more day in the hotel with the others, but bought a ticket on the same day and went home. I'm going to surprise Robert. I'll arrive early and with a tan. She smiled, looking out the window at the sea. The train arrived at its destination early in the morning. On the train, Camille had a nice chat with a neighbor and her grandson 9 years old. The grandmother treated the girl to fruit and enjoyed listening to her stories about her work, recalling her own youth. The mooring city was just waking up, washed by the night rain. It wasn't as warm here as it was by the sea. It was even a little fresh. Outside the cab window, sleepy alleys and early joggers whizzed by. In the alleys, the first rays of sunlight dispersed the foggy remnants. They played in puddles and glimmered drops on bushes and tree branches. The cab driver helped her unload her bag, wished her a good day, and drove off to his new passengers. Camille thought about how she would go up to the apartment, go in quietly, and lie down in bed with a sleeping Robert. How nice that today was her husband's day off and they would be able to sleep through lunch together, then make coffee and talk about the upcoming trip. Camille quietly turned the key in the lock so as not to wake Robert. Quietly, she entered the apartment and barely saw the familiar hallway, dazed. All the good mood she brought with her from the sea had collapsed and shattered into tiny pieces. Her heart was pounding like the wheels of the train she had come back here on. There were shoes lying in the hallway that she would recognize out of 100. They'd bought them together last year and picked up the last pair in town. The shoes belonged to Clara. At the mirror, Camille saw her keys and an equally achingly familiar car keychain. For a moment, a childish, naive thought crept into her head. Maybe something had happened, and Clara had come to ask for help. But the thought was immediately suffocated by the falling curtain of obviousness. From the bedroom, Camille heard soft voices. It seemed to her that her heart was pounding so that the neighbors could hear her. The girl crept quietly to the door and froze, listening to what was going on behind it. I almost talked him into totally buying me the parlor from Vanessa. A familiar female voice sounded. Will you get a divorce as soon as the official deal is done? The husband's voice answered him. On the same day, confirmed with a laugh the interlocutress. And when are you going to file the papers? I'm thinking of what to tell her. A sigh followed. The idea of a fake affair had failed. Failed because someone forgot their cell phone at home. A woman's voice interrupted. I've been working her as hard as I can. A little more, and she would have filed for divorce herself. We would have gotten away with it. And now you have to either talk head on or think of something else. It's a shame to go head on. Followed the answer after a short pause. I don't like her as a woman, but I pity her as a person. And the show is not pitiful. A female voice smirked. I choose the lesser of two zones. The male voice grinned. Camille clamped her hands over her mouth and felt the corners of her eyes grow wet. A wave of cold rushed up her back, her cheeks felt hot, and her throat felt like it was being squeezed in the grip of an invisible hand. The realization fell in pieces, and each one was worse than the last. It stung, eating away at everything good inside, like acid. Robert, you and I tried it back in college, but you were too right then, and I was too stupid. But if it had worked then, Clara's voice was quiet, but creeping. There might not have been those long years, with the bore and the dentist. My husband might not be here, and things would be easier now, and we'd be living somewhere abroad by now. If everything works out, that's what will happen. Robert confirmed. We'll manage remotely, you the salon and me the agency. Camille felt the tears soaking her shirt and imprinting hot drops on her chest. We'll be gone, and maybe they'll get something with William. A chuckle came from behind the door. I could see him looking at her. Good for Camille. She likes dumplings and soup and watching soap operas at night. She's always been a little short of you. She loves her work and doesn't like herself very much, said Robert. We live like neighbors. I'm tired of the home girl who always has everything according to plan. I feel like an old man. Next to her, I want something else. I know what you want, Robert, she whispered. Further in the room there was a commotion. Camille sat against the wall outside the door, shaking with shame, pity, disgust, resentment, and betrayal of the two people she thought closest to her after her mother. The last bit of realization poured out. The cup had emptied. The cold hands of reality finally closed around her throat. She jumped up and flung herself out of the apartment in what she was wearing. The street morning, Camille ran and ran, away from the shame and embarrassment she had lived in for so many years. She was disgusted with her own existence. She wanted to forget herself, to erase her memory. She wanted to go back 10 years, to pull her hand out of Clara's fingers, to send the smug asshole in the dormitory. Each year that passed was like whipping her in the back with a rod, leaving deep wounds and setting up the pain to roll in harder and harder. Tears covered her eyes. Everything was cloudy, barely recognizable. She stopped, breathed, and ran again. Passers-by shouted at her, but Camille did not hear, did not see. She wanted to hide from this vile feeling from herself. Girl, look out! It was the last shred of reality that imprinted itself on her memory before pain and darkness overrode her. The peaceful sounds of play snapped Camille out of oblivion. She was still thinking irritably what that nasty beeping sound was, similar to the trills of an electronic alarm clock from the 90s. My eyes opened with difficulty. My body felt woozy. My right leg felt petrified and wouldn't move. My whole right side gave a painful tightening sensation when I tried to turn on the bed. My head was buzzing. "Good morning. You're finally awake, Camille." A woman in a white coat greeted her. Camille looked around and only then realized that she was lying in a hospital bed. What happened to me? She looked at the leg in a cast that was sticking out from under the blanket. "You were hit by a car. I'm surprised you got away with a broken leg, a mild concussion, and moderate contusions." The doctor replied, looking at the paperwork. "They pick up other people in pieces in cases like this. You were born with your shirt on. Your family will be happy to know that you're on the mend." "Not all of them." Camille turned her back to the wall. "Is someone coming to see you?" "To call your relatives?" The doctor asked. "Tell my husband I've been hit by a car and I'm dead. I can't go back. I don't want to see him again, and I don't want to see her ever again." Pleadingly, Camille said without turning around. The doctor shook her head. "If they come, don't let them in," Camille added. The hospital was dreary, but the walls with the Red Cross seemed to shield her from the painful thoughts of what had happened. The physical pain didn't bother her as much as her soul was tearing up. The mother rushed to the hospital half an hour after the call. She first cringed, then cursed, then cried at her daughter's bedside. Camille told her everything she had heard that morning. When Miranda left her daughter's room, she gave the nurses each a box of chocolates, and on pain of complaining to the head doctor, ordered that no one with names beginning with the letters R and C be allowed to see her daughter. Camille blocked the numbers of the husband and the lying friend. She asked her mother and a coworker friend to pick up her belongings from her husband's apartment when he was away. Doctors said rehabilitation would take about 3 weeks. The fracture would finally heal in 3 months. One day there was a knock on the door of the room. Camille thought it was one of the staff, although they usually didn't bother to knock. "Come in," she shouted, not looking away from the magazine her mother had brought. "Hello, Camille." There was a familiar voice. William stood in the doorway with a bouquet of flowers and a robe thrown over his shoulders. Camille had mixed feelings when she saw her ex-girlfriend's husband. On the one hand, he reminded her of what had happened, but on the other hand, he had nothing to do with it. "You have no idea how hard I worked to get here," the man complained, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "They're practically checking IDs to get in to see you." "That's my request." Camille nodded. "Why, are you hiding from someone?" William joked. "Maybe I am," the girl confirmed. William stared at her in surprise. His eyes were filled with question and incomprehension. Camille exhaled and decided to tell. She recalled everything: Clara's partying at the Institute, her consumerist attitude toward men, and her hypocrisy under the mask of a friend. William listened with his mouth open. I want you not to fall victim to their game like I did. Get a divorce soon and don't listen to any pleas. Don't you dare buy a salon. Clara is using you and has been using you. Camille finished. Where did you? The stunned William couldn't believe his ears. They talked about it for a long time. The girl asked the man not to tell anyone where she was or what was wrong with her, and not to do anything stupid that would ruin his life. At the end, when William was leaving, he asked, Camille, tell me, do I have a chance? Not at the moment. She shook her head. I want to be alone. Maybe in the future, maybe. I understand, correct me soon. I'll come by, if you don't mind. Nodded William. Come over. She blinked, showing agreement. Time passes differently in the village than in the city. It is measured and quiet. Hustle and hurry are alien to those who are accustomed to get up to the trill of the rooster. A light frost touched the rowan berries, which shone against the snow with bright lights. The snow itself sparkled in the sunlight, still fresh, not crushed by anyone's feet and paws. Granddaughter, there's a letter for you. Kathy grunted, entering the hay and waving the envelopes. Thank you. Camille shouted from the kitchen. She was preparing a simple breakfast for herself and her grandmother. It's been a long time since I've seen a letter. Sitting down on a stool, Kathy exclaimed, You young people are all calling now. Is there a letter from some fiancé? She handed Camille an envelope. She took a quick glance at the sender's name and decided to read it later. After her recovery, Camille immediately went to her grandmother's house in the country. She could not stay in the city, where every street reminded her of the experience, betrayal, and shame. The girl quit her job, took care of other minor matters, made her mother her representative in the divorce proceedings so she wouldn't have to deal with Robert anymore. Out of sight, out of mind, said her mother as she saw her off. You can go as you like and come back as you like. Just call me often. It was quiet in the village, where the pain began to subside and gradually recede. Time was doing its work, healing the wounded soul. Mother did not talk about Robert and the divorce, only promised to tell me when it was completely over. The envelope had an address and William's name on it. How did he know where to find her? It remained a mystery. Camille ran her eyes over the lines. William had written about the divorce, about leaving Clara with almost nothing. She deliberately skipped that part of the letter. Dear Camille, I realize that I'm probably an unnecessary person in your life, but since that evening in the cafe, you haven't left my mind. I've made a lot of mistakes and missed a lot of chances, but I don't want to let you go. The girl stopped, listening to herself. Something faintly trembled in her after these words. I'm willing to wait as long as you say. I hope for an answer. William. Camille folded the letter, tucked it into the envelope, and began to twirl it in her hands. If she had doubted it at the hospital, now she knew for sure. Kathy came into the room. What do you think I should write back? Asked the old woman, looking at the concentrated face of her granddaughter. I think that old fans are not invited into the new life. Camille smiled at her grandmother, tearing open the envelope. She tossed the scraps into the trash can and looked out the window. Grandma, the neighbor's here, probably to ask about the cow again. She's so restless. She'll cure the animal. The old woman shook her hands and trampled in the hay.